Don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our latest emotional stories. These are the kinds of moments that stay with you long after the screen fades to black. Now let me take you back to a quiet afternoon. One that began like any other, and quietly changed everything. It was just after 3 in the afternoon when the knock came. Not loud, not urgent, just firm enough to be intentional. I remember glancing at the clock first, the way you do when something interrupts a moment of stillness. The clouds outside had pressed low against the sky, turning the world a softer shade of gray. The kind of afternoon that makes time feel suspended, like nothing is supposed to happen at all. I had been sitting in the sunroom, curled into the corner of my favorite chair, rereading a mystery novel I'd already finished more times than I could count. It wasn't about suspense anymore. It was comfort. Familiar lines. Predictable turns. A conversation I knew by heart. A mug of tea rested on the small table beside me, untouched for too long. When I lifted it, the warmth was gone. I didn't mind. Some things didn't need to be warm to be familiar. The wind had picked up outside, just enough to send a soft scatter of leaves skimming along the front walkway. They scraped gently against the concrete. A sound so faint I almost mistook it for memory. Then came the knock again. I wasn't expecting anyone. I rarely was. For a moment, I considered letting it go unanswered. There was a quiet agreement I'd made with myself over the years, that unexpected interruptions were optional now. I had earned that right. Still, curiosity nudged me forward. I stood, smoothing my cardigan without thinking, and walked toward the front door. Before opening it, I lifted the lace curtain just enough to peek through. And that's when I saw him. Daniel. My neighbor's son. Or rather, the boy he had been, layered beneath the man he now was. He stood on the porch with his hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders slightly hunched against the chill in the air. His hair was darker than I remembered, his face more defined. Older. Sharper in some ways. Softer in others. He couldn't have been a boy anymore. Late 20s, maybe closer to 30. Time had done its quiet work. I felt a small pause inside me. Not surprise exactly, but recognition. The kind that pulls something loose from the past and sets it gently in the present. I hadn't seen him much since he'd moved to the city for work. Years ago now. Back then, he'd left with big plans and restless energy, the kind young people carry without realizing it fades. As a child, he'd been everywhere. Skateboarding up and down the street, laughing too loud. Always one scraped knee away from disaster. His mother would shout after him from the porch, warning him to slow down, to wear a helmet, to be careful. He'd always smiled and promised he would. He rarely did, but he had always been polite. Even then. Always looked adults in the eye. Always said thank you. It was noticeable even back then. I opened the door. Daniel. I said, my hand still resting lightly on the edge of it. He looked up, and when he smiled, it was the same smile I remembered, just steadier now. Hi, Mrs. Ellison, he said. His voice was deeper than I remembered. Not dramatically so. Just enough to mark the years. I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all, I replied, surprised at how natural it felt to say his name again. It's been a long time. He nodded. I was visiting my mom. I saw your car in the driveway and thought. I don't know. I thought I'd say hello. There was something tentative in the way he said it, like he wasn't entirely sure this visit made sense even to him. I felt a flutter in my chest. Not romantic. Not maternal either. Something in between. Nostalgia, maybe. Curiosity. The strange awareness of time folding in on itself. Well, I said, stepping back, come in. You don't have to stand out here. He hesitated for half a second, then stepped inside. The scent of rain followed him in, clean and sharp, mixed with something deeper, woodsy. Cedar, maybe. It clung faintly to his jacket, lingering even after he took it off. The house suddenly felt aware of itself. Too quiet. The ticking of the wall clock grew louder, each second marking its presence. The floorboards creaked under his weight in a way they hadn't for mine alone. The silence I'd grown used to shifted, rearranged itself. My husband had passed away 3 years earlier. That kind of loss doesn't announce itself every day. Most days it's quiet. Manageable. Something you carry without thinking about the weight. But every now and then, something reminds you that the house once held more voices than it does now. Would you like some tea? I asked, grateful for the normalcy of the question. If it's not too much trouble, he said quickly. No trouble at all. In the kitchen, I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. As I waited for it to boil, I caught my reflection in the polished surface of the metal. The lines around my eyes were deeper now. Gray threaded softly through my dark hair. But there was still something there. Something warm. Something present. Without realizing it, I brushed my hair back behind my ear. An old habit. We sat at the kitchen table. The same one where my children had spilled juice, carved their initials, and whispered secrets they thought I couldn't hear. Daniel's gaze drifted around the room, lingering on small details. The worn edges. The familiar clutter. This place, he said slowly, still smells the same. I smiled. Old furniture and cinnamon? He laughed, surprised. Exactly. We talked easily after that. About the neighborhood. What had changed, what stubbornly hadn't. About his job in Chicago, the long hours, the traffic, the way the city never really slept. About his mother's sudden obsession with indoor plants and how half of them were already dying. I told him about my garden. About volunteering at the library. About how days could feel full and empty at the same time. The conversation flowed, natural and unforced. But beneath it, something else moved quietly. A current. Unnamed, but present. At one point, the words paused. And I realized he was looking at me. Not glancing. Studying. You always seemed different, he said suddenly. I blinked. Different how? Even when I was a kid, he continued. You weren't like the other moms. You listened. You made people feel safe. The word landed softly, but it stayed. That's kind of you. I said, unsure what else to offer. He leaned back, looking faintly embarrassed. So that probably sounds strange. I didn't mean it like. No. Interrupta gently. It doesn't sound strange. We sat in the quiet that followed. This time it wasn't awkward. Just present. Outside, the rain began, slow at first, then steady. A gentle rhythm against the windows. He glanced at his phone, then turned it face down on the table. I'm not in a rush, he said. And in that moment, neither was I. The rain had settled into a steady rhythm by the time we moved into the living room. It wasn't heavy or dramatic. Just consistent. The kind of rain that doesn't demand attention, but somehow holds it anyway. Each drop tapped softly against the windows, filling the spaces between our thoughts. I reached for the switch and lit the gas fireplace. Not because the room was cold. It wasn't, but because the quiet felt too wide, and the flicker of flame made it feel occupied. Daniel sat across from me on the couch, one leg tucked under him. His posture relaxed in a way that suggested he hadn't realized how tense he'd been until now. The firelight caught the edges of his face, softening it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It felt intentional. Can I ask you something? He said eventually, his voice lower now. Of course. He hesitated, eyes fixed on the fire. Do you ever get lonely? The question landed gently, but it stayed. I could have given him the easy answer. The polite one. The one people expect. But something about the way he asked, not curious, but careful, made honesty feel right. Yes, I said after a moment. Not every day. But some days it feels heavier. He nodded slowly. Yeah, me too. And just like that, the space between us changed. It didn't feel like distance anymore. It felt like understanding. The rain pressed a little harder against the glass. He shifted, running a hand through his hair, like he was deciding whether to say something or let it stay unsaid. I didn't rush him. Finally he spoke. When I think about real conversations, he said quietly, the ones that actually mattered, your face always comes up. I looked at him, surprised. You probably don't even remember, he continued. But after my dad left, I sat on your porch one evening. I was angry. I didn't know what to do with it. I remembered. The small boy with clenched fists. The way he'd stared at the ground, trying not to cry. You didn't try to fix anything, he said. You just sat there. You let me be upset. That meant more than you know. My throat tightened. That stayed with me, he added. More than a lot of things. You grew into a good man, I said softly. He gave a small, uncertain smile. I'm still figuring it out. Aren't we all? We laughed, quiet, shared, and for a moment the years between then and now seemed to fold inward. The fire crackled. The rain softened again. He glanced at his phone once more, then pushed it farther away. I used to think you were the most beautiful woman on the street, he said suddenly. The words caught me off guard. Not just because of how you looked, he added quickly, almost like he wanted to clarify, but because everything felt calmer when you were around. I don't know why I'm saying this now. I just needed to. There was no expectation in his voice. No agenda. Just honesty. I didn't feel uncomfortable. I felt seen. Thank you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, then leaned back, eyes returning to the fire, as if giving the moment space to exist without pressure. The silence that followed was different. It didn't echo. It hummed. Something small shifted inside me. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just enough to be undeniable. When he finally stood to leave, he lingered at the door. I don't know when I'll be back, he said. But if it's all right, I'd like to visit again. I'd like that, I replied. And I meant it. After the door closed, I stood there for a long while letting the quiet return, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. Something had been stirred. Not desire. Connection. Later, I made another cup of tea and sat in the same chair, watching the rain trace slow paths down the glass. His words echoed in my mind like a gentle knock, not demanding to be answered, only acknowledged. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone in the world. And I knew this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. If this story touched you even a little, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories like this. Sometimes the quietest moments leave the deepest marks. Thank you for listening.